everyone, we are back with another Nancy Drew No Spoilers review, and today we're going to be reviewing books 36 through 40. So as always, I do these in a no spoiler format, so I try not to tell you the ending of things. I might tell you a couple details that stood out to me, but nothing that is going to overall ruin your reading experience or anything. But I want to get your guys' opinion. Anyone who regularly watches these videos and you really enjoy them, definitely leave me some comments below, because I noticed that there is about the same amount of people watching these videos, but I never get any comments on these. So I would definitely love if you guys have any thoughts on these stories, or you like watching them, just let me know. Give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment below. And I've also been toying with the idea of switching up the format of this just a little bit, but I really want to get your guys' input on whether that is something you'd like me to do. So the thought that I was going to change was, do you want me to keep this as a no spoilers review, or do you want me to go more in depth with the books that I am reviewing? Like, do you want me to tell you all the details and every little thought that I have, and you know, my criticisms, and what I thought they did good, what I thought they did bad, you know, the just nitty-gritty details that would lean more towards a spoilery type of discussion, but it would allow me to go more in depth with the books than trying to keep it so surface level with my thoughts on them. Because there are times where I want to just tell you every single thing I think about some of these books, and I want to tell you what I think about the villains and stuff like that. But of course, if you guys are not really wanting me to do that and you want me to keep it more surface level, just kind of give you synopsises and some brief, non-spoilery type of reviews, definitely let me know what you prefer, because I want to just make these videos as entertaining for you guys. And I feel like sometimes if I'm trying to like not spoil things, it will, I don't know, there's only so much you can say about a book without trying to spoil it. I just want to know what you guys would be most interested in. So definitely leave me a comment below what you would prefer. So before we get started, I wanted to share this cute little thing that I DIY'd for my Nancy Drew book, and I'm kind of playing with expanding on this, but the idea kind of came from, I was at the car dealership and I was getting like my oil change and tires rotated and all that kind of stuff, and so I'm sitting there in the service lobby and I've got my book, and someone just kept asking me questions about like, oh, what are you reading? What do you think about that book? And as an introvert, I don't really like talking to strangers that much, but sometimes when you're reading a book in public, more outgoing people will tend to comment on that or ask you questions about that. And so I kind of came up with this idea of just a little something that I could do for my book, so that, not that I'm ashamed or embarrassed or anything, but just so that people don't talk to me. I'm an introvert at heart, so I might lose some of you guys on this one, but I created this cute little faux leather book cover that I can put onto my Nancy Drew books. I measured them out so that it would fit perfectly, and it does, and I love it. Number one, it's pink, I love it, but also now I kind of feel a little more comfortable like reading in public, because like, I don't know, I feel like someone's not as likely to ask me what I'm reading when they don't know what it is. Well, maybe they will. Maybe this whole plan will backfire. I don't know. But I thought it was so cute, and I love how it turned out, and it was so simple to make. So I just wanted to share that with you guys because I thought it was really fun, and hopefully it'll just kind of make my reading in public a little more discreet. And it also serves like a double purpose of like keeping my actual books in good condition and stuff like that. Not that I don't take care of them, but I do take them around with me a lot of places. So it just kind of keeps them a little more nice and protected. Alright guys, so starting off with a set of books, you know we always do the orphan counter. So this is the counter that we left off on from the last set of books. So this is where we're at, and we're gonna get started and see if we have any more orphans in this group of books. Alright, so the next book we have in the series, this is book number 36. This one is called The Secret of the Golden Pavilion, and this one was published in 1959. So one thing I ran into with this group of books, which I thought was going to be a nightmare, but luckily I found a way out of it. So you guys know I always like to start by reading the actual synopsis in the book, kind of like in the front page there that they have, but for some reason certain volumes and certain editions of the hardback spines here do not include the little summary. So you guys know with the last book that I covered, which was book number 35, The Haunted Showboat, I actually wrote my own little summary and read that to you guys, which I like, it's fun, and you know, I don't mind doing. But with this group of books, there were like 3 or 4 of them I was going to have to write summaries for, and they just take a little bit more time to do, and I try to like write them in the Nancy Drew style, so I was like, great, this is gonna take me a long time like preparing for these books, especially since, you know, when I have a group of 5 books, you know, I read them over, you know, a month. So this book I read about a month ago, so I had to like kind of refresh my memory on things. Luckily, something came through Clutch, and I was trying to find online the summaries, and I was like, well, maybe it's not in my print edition, but it's in another one, and someone uploaded it. Couldn't find them. I was freaking out. I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm gonna have to write summaries for like 4 of these books, until I found a website that has some digital scans of the original book dust jackets from like the 50s versions, and luckily some of them included on the little inner flap, it had the summary of the book that are not included in these versions of the book. So I was actually able to find them. But there's always a twist. The image that I was able to find was so low res you could not clearly read the actual descriptions and stuff. I will put on screen like what it looked like for me. So I had to carefully like zoom in and zoom out and read these like pixelated mess and try to decipher what the text was. And you guys, oh my gosh, it was giving me a headache. I have pretty decent vision for up close things, but this was really testing me. Luckily, I was able to figure them all out from these super low res images, and I think I might try to digitize these for you guys, so if anyone else needs these for a resource, that you will have what I did not have. So hopefully this will be helpful. I will try to put a link. I might do like a Google Doc or something and just have a link of all of these little summaries that I can put together, and it'll probably be something I'm adding to and something you'll want to come back to for updates. But that was a very long roundabout way to say I did find summaries for these official Nancy Drew summaries. So I always feel like their summaries are better than mine because I don't know what points and plot points to highlight and detail in these summaries. So these are the official Nancy Drew summaries, but I went through hell and high water to get them. Now that that long soliloquy is over, I will start by reading the summary for The Secret of the Golden Pavilion. To find the key to this fascinating mystery, Nancy Drew and her friends visit the beautiful Hawaiian Islands. Here, the young pretty sleuth's prowess as a detective rises to the challenge of one unanswerable question after another. Did fun-loving, eccentric old Nikio Sakamaki have 1, 2, or 3 living grandchildren? Are the symbols contained in a letter written before his death part of the game that the elderly gentleman had made of bequeathing his magnificent Honolulu estate with a lovely golden pavilion? What connection does the ghostly dancing figure who haunts the pavilion by night have with the unusual mystery? A trail of baffling clues leads Nancy from the Golden Pavilion to the brink of the Mauna Loa volcano. Busy as she is, Nancy takes time out to enjoy the thrilling water sports off Waikiki and a gay luau, a native-style feast. Tension mounds with every passing moment as Nancy ingeniously fits into place the scattered pieces of the strange puzzle. You too will find the popular young detective's adventure in the land of volcanoes, cerulean blue sky, and colorful beaches as breathlessly exciting as she and her friends did. Okay, so do we have an orphan in this story? So technically, yes, we do. So there is the elderly Nikio Sakamaki, who is like the grandfather who is deceased in this story, and his grandson's name is Kamuela Sakamaki, and it is actually stated that he is technically an orphan. Now, he is 40 years old, so it's not like the typical orphan story, and it's not really part of like the trope of the story is all, but hey, they clearly mentioned he was an orphan, that both his parents were deceased, so I'm taking that as an orphan, and we are counting him on the counter. And as far as my bingo sheet for this one, I did get 1 5 across bingo, but I was so close to getting like several more bingos. Let's see, there was 1 way, I needed 1 more. Let's see, I needed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I could have gotten a 7-way bingo, like a 7, 8-way bingo if I had just found like 3 more things. So I was super, super close, but I did get a full bingo on this card. And again, if you guys would like to play along with these Nancy Drew bingo cards as you're reading, I do have these for sale on my Etsy page for digital download. So you can print these off instantly. You can print as many as you want, play along as you read the Nancy Drew stories. I have been finding them to be so much fun, and I had a blast creating these. And now that I've read even more books since I initially started these, I kind of think I want to do some updates to it as well. titles. So I've just been loving doing the Nancy Drew bingo cards. So if you would also like to play along, I will definitely have a link to these where you can purchase them. All right, so some of my thoughts on this book. Overall, I really enjoyed this one. This one just kind of had a little bit of a different feel. And the cool thing about this one, it was published in 1959, which was, I believe, the same year that Hawaii actually became a US state, which was like really on the brink of the cusp of everything with this one. And this one was really a lot of historical facts about Hawaii and about the culture and all kinds of things that in this time period probably would have been very new information to your typical American. And I thought it was just very cutting edge, because the same year that they became a state, this book was published. So they were definitely had some stuff in the works. This one, I would have to say, really feels more like a travelogue style type of mystery, because a lot of this really does follow more of the surroundings of Hawaii and the travel aspect of it and all the beach things. Like, it kind of felt like a vacation ad for Hawaii in a little bit, and I feel like the mystery was a little bit secondary to that, but not as bad as I thought it was in the Witch Tree Symbol, like that one that had to do with like the Amish community and way of life. I feel like that mystery really took like way backseat to the actual story itself. So I feel like this one definitely is a little bit more heavy on the travel vacation-y aspect side for Hawaii, but the mystery is of course woven into it as well. So a few little funny things about this. You know, typically a lot of Nancy Drew books, we will see Nancy, Bess, and George going someplace, and then the boys either come later or happen to be at the same place at the same time. So for this one, Nancy is going on a trip to Hawaii to help a man whose grandfather has left his Honolulu estate to him. However, there are some other claimants that are claiming to be grandchildren of him as well, and they need to settle the estate to be divided into 3 ways for the 3 surviving grandchildren. But the younger Mr. Sakamaki has never heard of these other 2 supposed grandchildren, and so that's kind of where Nancy's coming in to sort of investigate that mystery. So of course she gets to go to Hawaii to figure it all out. Meanwhile, at the estate, there is a ghostly hula dancer that is spotted night after night, and she seems to be guarding something around the golden pavilion here. So you can see that from the artwork here. And one thing about the cover that I thought I'd mention, I was trying to figure out, I can't really decide which one's Nancy. I think this one is supposed to be Nancy, but then I was like, I'm not quite sure who this is supposed to be. It could be another kind of character that's in the story that I think it's who it's supposed to be, but I just remember seeing this and I'm like, huh, which one's Nancy supposed to be? But I think this one's Nancy. The other thing I really kind of liked about this book, it kind of reminded me a lot of like the Brady Bunch. Kind of was giving me those kinds of vibes with it being, you know, that same kind of time period. And a lot of the hotels and some restaurants that are mentioned in the story are actually still in operation today, which is so interesting. We had similar things like that with the Haunted Showboat, and I just kind of like when there are some real life locations put into the story as well. I just feel like it just makes it even more interesting in my opinion. I think this one's kind of funny as far as like how the villain goes and like how they identify him, because there is a particular quirk that he does, and that's kind of like supposed to be like the smoking gun of like catching the villain, which I think is a little bit silly. But overall, I did enjoy this one. However, I felt like the mystery of this one was a little bit far-fetched, because it kind of takes on like a riddle scavenger hunt type of, I guess, mystery, and it just kind of seems like, I don't know who in real world would have even figured out that mystery. I don't know. But the treasure in the end is a very interesting one. I always kind of enjoy when it's something a little bit different. So that was definitely the case with this book. So overall, I ranked this one 4 stars. I thought that this was a pretty good story, and I always love whenever we get a more exotic location to go experience with Nancy through her mysteries. So this one was definitely a fun one for me, and I ranked this one 4 stars. All right, moving on to the next book. This one is number 37. This one is called The Clue in the Old Stagecoach, and this one was published in 1960. Again, I have the summary for this one, so let me refer to my notes. So this one reads, "How in the world," Nancy asks herself, "could anyone manage to successfully hide a whole stagecoach? And where?" Apparently, eccentric old Abner Langstreet succeeded in doing just that many, many years ago. And in the stagecoach lies buried the clue to a forgotten fortune. It is this baffling mystery that Nancy Drew must quickly solve if she is to help the desperate citizens of the town of Francisville, close by Camp Merriweather, where Nancy and her friends Bess and George are vacationing. Yet at every turn, the pretty young sleuth meets new and dangerous obstacles in her quest for the hidden treasure. Is it Nancy's imagination that she is secretly followed by the suspicious Monteith couple? Why does crotchety old Judd Hillary warn Nancy to leave this place before you get hurt? And who is the mysterious whistler? Suddenly, the peaceful atmosphere of the sleepy town is shattered by a series of explosions, and Nancy is forced to use all of her ingenuity and detective skills to solve one of the most challenging mysteries of her career. Alright, so in the story, we do not have any orphans, and as far as my bingo goes, I did not bingo on this card, but I was very, very close to it. I had 2 bingos. I just needed one more spot and I would have bingoed on. So no bingo for this one. So in this one, like I said, Nancy is vacationing summer camp with her friends Bess and George. They're just enjoying their summer, and they happen to come across an old stagecoach down in the valley when they're hiking out one day, and they go to investigate it to find that someone who is actually towing the stagecoach, actually their lines broke and their stagecoach got left in the middle of the field. So Nancy ends up talking to a few people that leads her into finding the mystery of an old man that used to live in the town many, many years ago, who supposedly had a hidden fortune somewhere having to do with an old stagecoach. So of course, Nancy of course thinks that this is the stagecoach that she is after, so she goes to investigate it, and she ends up meeting a lot of different obstacles, I will say. So one thing I will say about this book, this one definitely, just reading it, especially coming off of The Secret of the Golden Pavilion, this one just, in this group of books, it really kind of felt like an early Nancy Drew book to me. It kind of had a little bit more of, it didn't feel as up to date or cutting edge, you know. It takes place in fictional, you know, areas around River Heights and things like that, which if you guys have seen my videos, you know those aren't always my favorite just because I really enjoy the real world locations of the Nancy Drew mysteries, but this is one more of like a hometown type of mystery, although it's not in River Heights, if you know what I mean. Kind of honestly felt a little bit on the bland side, just especially coming off of the big Hawaiian trip and everything like that. So that was one thing that I just felt like, how are you gonna live up to that after that type of mystery? But this one is really fun. It has like a really nice like kind of summer resort atmosphere. They're doing like hiking and swimming and tennis competitions and tournaments and things like that, as well as trying to solve the mystery. And they do have a very interesting couple that is also staying at the same resort as them, who just kind of seem to always be one step behind them, and Nancy is kind of trying to figure out, you know, what is going on with them. So a few like non-spoilery details about the story that I just thought were really funny. There is one mention in the story where it says Ned had been dating Nancy for several months, and I like to take notes as I'm reading my stories, so I had noted that one and I said more like 32 years Ned and Nancy have been dating. So I just thought it was very cute. Time in Nancy Drew Land is just so fun. So we're 37 books in, but they've only been dating a few months. Another interesting thing about the story is Nancy kind of has like a camp fling, I would say, which is, you know, very interesting because Nancy is such like a goody goody two shoes kind of girl, but it just seems like her relationship with Ned is just a little bit interesting because it seems like she can kind of go off and date whoever she wants, but if Ned were to do that, I don't think it would fly. So Nancy kind of has a little bit of like a camp romance, I would say. Maybe it's more of just like a, I don't know, a camp date type of thing, but she actually has a guy that she is hanging out with, going on dates with. And then there was a funny quote. It says, George asked Nancy what she's going to do about Rick now that Ned is going to be coming to visit. And just so happens that the 3 guys that the girls are kind of, you know, interested in at the camp just happen to need to leave as soon as the other guys show up, which I thought was so funny. Like, okay, but here's the quote that really kind of made me laugh. Nancy pretends to look worried and says, some situations solve themselves. I just thought that was so like, oh my gosh, Nancy, like, girl. We also see some other fun activities that the girls are getting up to in the summer camp. They actually end up joining a synchronized swimming competition show or activity, I guess, at the camp. So I thought that was interesting. Who knew that they could synchronize swim? And another thing that I kind of thought was interesting about this book is that we do have a few more red herrings as far as certain leads that they get and things like that and clues, and it just kind of like struck me that this one was kind of a little bit of a complicated mystery to unravel with how they end up piecing the mystery together, I will say. And the treasure in this one is also, I would say, an unconventional treasure. But I do have a few like kind of plot holes with the treasure in this one, and there's no way for me to get around it without spoiling anything, so I'm just gonna leave that to myself, but I will leave you with a little hint. When you realize what the treasure is, just consider the value of it from when the treasure was lost to when the treasure arrived, and how would someone know what the value of that would have been. That is the vaguest hint I can give you as far as the treasure goes on this book. So unfortunately, I gave this one like 2 stars. Maybe that's a little harsh, but I honestly just felt like this one, coming off of the Hawaiian trip, was just a little bit of a bland mystery. It does have a slight bit of Wild Western kind of vibes to it, but to me it didn't really. But other comments that I read, a lot of people are like, oh, I kind of like the Wild West vibes of it. I just don't really feel like it had that much going on. I would say if you like the kind of like summer vacation Nancy Drew mysteries where she's just like hanging out and swimming and relaxing but also solving a mystery, this might be a good fun one for you to read. But this one just wasn't my favorite. I feel like there could have been more action in the overall mystery of the story. Alright guys, moving on, we are on to book number 38. This one is called The Mystery of the Fire Dragon, and this one was published in 1961. Alright, so for the summary for this one, it reads, never before in all the exciting adventures of Nancy Drew's famous career has she encountered a case as perplexing as the mystery of the fire dragon. It all starts with a strange note from Chi-Che Sung, the beautiful Chinese girl who lives with her grandfather in the New York apartment adjoining that of Nancy's Aunt Eloise. From the frantic tone of the note written before Chi-Che mysteriously disappeared, it is evident that she is in danger. And when Grandpa Sung becomes the victim of a ruthless thief who steals the archaeologist's precious manuscript, the mystery deepens. Nancy has only one clue to follow, and a slight one at that. The unusual hand-painted fire dragon on the lower right-hand corner of the stationery Chi-Che used in her plea for help. The complicated mystery grows to fantastic proportions before Nancy and her friends George and Bess unearth the vital clue that takes them on a jet flight to exotic Hong Kong. The 3 girls become involved in a series of unforgettable, breathtaking adventures when Nancy matches wits with the cruelest adversaries she has ever faced. So we do have an orphan in the story, and her name is Chi-Che Sung. And as far as the bingo goes, I did not bingo on this card, but again, I was so close. This was one of those cards, let's see, I could have had a 3-way bingo if I had one more thing. I could have had another bingo one way, so let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I could have had like a 3 or 4-way bingo off this one. It was so close. So in the story, this one is another really fun real world location. We spend a lot of the time in this mystery in New York, as well as we go to Hong Kong with solving the mystery. This one was so interesting, and it's also mentioned that Ned happens to be studying in Hong Kong for his college courses. That was quite interesting. It also gives us a little bit of lore into Ned, and it says that he wants to go into the US intelligence service. So he thinks that studying abroad and speaking Cantonese and all that will be helpful with that goal of his. So I just love whenever we get these little details, one-liners of just kind of into the minds of some of the characters, because we don't get those too often. So one complaint I had of this is that they already repeated another character name in here, and that is Mr. Sung. We already saw a character named Mr. Sung in the Clue of the Leaning Chimney, and of course it's another Chinese character. It's like, there are more names than Sung for a Chinese character, so I'm not quite sure why they would repeat that one, especially with it being so soon. I feel like that was only like 10 books ago, and they've already repeated that character name. They could have easily made it any other Asian name, but they chose to use the same one. Another funny non-spoiler thing that was mentioned in here that I made note of that just made me laugh. There is one point whenever the girls are going to New York, and George says, "We even have our birth certificates with us in case we need to identify ourselves at the airport." Like, kind of unprompted, and it made me laugh. Nancy says she always carries her birth certificate with her. And I thought that was crazy, because I'm like, oh my gosh, girl, that is so not safe. Don't be carrying your birth certificate around just willy-nilly. So that was just a really funny random comment that made me laugh. And we also have some brutal fat shaming for Bess in this story. I thought this was the worst one yet, but you guys, it's definitely not. But this one had a really brutal line. So at one point, Bess says, "Do you suppose Ned will bring along dates for George and me?" And George just like massacres her. And George's response is, "He probably will, but maybe you'd better go on a diet, Bess. Your huge appetite may frighten the boys away." George, oh my god. That was just so blunt and so mean. Like, that wasn't even like funny or cute or like, I don't know, quirky. Like, that was just rude and mean. So that line really kind of made me mad. So we also have a few yikes moments, I will say, in this story. Anytime there's any kind of like ethnic approach to a story, there always seems to be a little bit of a fumble. And in this story, like the summary mentioned, the main character Chi-Chi, she is missing, and in order to try to track her down, they dress George up because she just so happens to look just like this Chinese girl that's missing. So they dress her up in her clothes and apply Chinese makeup to make people think that Chi-Chi is back. So they basically put her in yellow face to try to solve the mystery. Not once, but twice. So I would say that is definitely a yikes moment for Nancy Drew book. And I will say there are a few elements in this story that I feel like were kind of some recycled plot points that we saw in the Whispering Statue story. Now, I really enjoyed that story and I liked it because it has to do with like a bookstore. We kind of see another theme that involves a bookstore in this case. So there was some parallels there that I felt like were a little similar to the Whispering Statue story. So there are a few things that feel a little bit familiar, including there happens to be a character, her name is Mrs. Horace so-and-so in the Whispering Statue, and we also have another character named Mrs. Horace so-and-so in this one too, but the last names are different. But I just thought it was so similar how they would even take part of the same character name and kind of reuse a plot point there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. This is another one that has a lot of villains going on, so it was a little bit complicated for me to kind of keep track of who was who, but we do have some really cool, interesting, like heroic moments with Nancy. But there are a few more blunders where I'm just kind of like, Nancy, girl, what are you doing? So overall, I did rank this one 4 stars just because this one was really exciting. There was a lot going on. I felt like there weren't too many stale points of the story where they weren't actively trying to solve the mystery or trying to progress the storyline. There are a few big leaps in logic with solving the mystery, but I overall thought this was a very, very interesting one and I really enjoyed it. So I ranked this one 4 stars. And if you definitely like more of the international or location-based type of mysteries, this is definitely a good one to read. All right, moving on to the next one, we have book number 39. This one is called The Clue of the Dancing Puppet, and this one was published in 1962. Luckily, this one has the summary in the copy of my book. So this one reads, when the eerie performances of a life-size puppet begin to haunt the old Van Pelt estate, where an amateur acting group, the Footlighters, have their theater, Nancy Drew is called upon to unravel the baffling mystery. From the moment the pretty detective and her friends Bess and George arrive at the mansion, the dancing puppet puzzle is further complicated by Tammy Whitlock, the Footlighters' temperamental leading lady, and Emmett Calhoun, a Shakespearean actor. Nancy's search of the mansion's dark, musty attic for clues to the weird mystery starts a frightening chain of reaction. A phone call from a stranger with a witch-like cackling voice warns her to get out. Next, an encounter with 2 jewel thieves suspects adds another perplexing angle to the puzzle. Finally, when Nancy sees the life-size puppet flitting across the moonlit lawn and chases it, she learns that someone with a sinister motive is determined to keep her from solving the case. Is it one of the Footlighters, or is it an outsider? Unknowingly, Nancy places herself in even greater danger when she is persuaded to perform in the Footlighters' current show. As the young detective unravels the threads of this tangled mystery, Carolyn Keene fans will follow Nancy from clue to clue in spine-tingling excitement. All right, we do not have an orphan in this story, and as far as my bingo goes, I did get 1 5 across bingo. So remember when I said I thought the last book was the worst at the best fat shaming? You guys, this one is so much worse. This one has several instances of best fat shaming, and it just kind of like was really getting like a little bit much. Did not age well. And usually a lot of the times the fat shaming comments tend to come from George, but Nancy got in on some of them this time, and it's just like, girl, come on, you are better than that. Like, you are little Miss Goody Two-Shoes. Quit being so rude to your friend. Literally page 1, we're already hearing about Bess reducing for the play. We'll come back to more of that in just a moment, but we also get another little detail that we don't get too often. This is actually about Nancy's mom, and it's just a little quick 1-line type of insight, but it says that at the time that Nancy Drew's mom passed away, she died from a sudden illness. And I don't think that has ever been said before in any of the Nancy Drew books. So that was just a little one-liner, but I always pick up on those types of things just because we hear so little about Nancy's mom. So in this mystery, Nancy and her friends are invited to go to the Van Pelt estate, which, like the summary said, is the kind of like the headquarters and performance area for the Footlighters, which is an amateur theater group. So Nancy and George actually get initiated into the group. Bess is already actually in it, so she's kind of like the go-between, like kind of brings them into the theater group, because Nancy's working undercover to try to figure out what is going on with this creepy dancing puppet that has been spotted on the lawn at night, and it's starting to scare members away and people away and starting to cause some problems. So Nancy, Bess, and George are actually staying at the old Van Pelt estate, which they say the bottom floor is supposed to be used as like the dressing rooms and everything for all the actors, but then the second floor is for the couple that is staying there that are the coaches for the amateur actors, and then one of their friends whose name is Emmett Calhoun, who they so creatively call him and refer to him throughout the entire book as Callie Old Boy. Every single time they call him Callie Old Boy. Just a stylistic choice, I guess, so Callie Old Boy. If you can't spot it from a mile away, of course, Nancy's newfound skill in the story is, of course, acting. There is a part where she ends up needing to fill in, and Nancy does that absolutely flawlessly, memorizing the entire play in about 3 hours, so what can't Nancy do? Okay, so back to a few of the fat shaming comments on these. Some of these I had to just like pull out because they're so ridiculous. I just had to make mention of them. So Nancy, this time, is fat shaming Bess, and Bess just kindly asks Nancy about, you know, how about we go have Hannah's cooking, because, you know, Hannah is Nancy's housekeeper and cooks for them all the time and makes wonderful food. So Bess is like, hey, how about we go have Hannah's cooking? And Nancy says, we could, of course, but there's a certain young lady who's been asked to play a part in the new show. If she gained too many pounds, she might lose her chance. Nancy! That is so mean! And of course, Bess, you know, not standing up for herself, she just says, well, I won't eat dessert. Like I said, it's usually George who is just mercilessly fat shaming Bess, but this time it was Nancy. Another few like kind of continuity errors. So again, as always, the boys show up, but it mentions that they are camp counselors at Lake Sylvan or whatever, and for some reason they have to fly to come visit them at the Van Pelt estate, which is not supposed to be far from River Heights, which I believe Lake Sylvan is not supposed to be far from River Heights either, so why are they flying in? I don't know, a little bit of a geographical error there, I don't know, but apparently they have to fly in to visit Nancy. We have another case of Nancy kind of purposefully making Ned jealous with another, not really like a romantic interest, but she does have to step in as the leading lady into the play, and of course in the play there is a kiss that is received, and that just of course makes Ned completely jealous, and Nancy seems to not care and even teases him about it a little bit. Back to another fact shaming comment. I said in my notes, I kind of have little feisty notes, and my notes say, God damn, Bess can't catch a break. And then she says she's hungry, and George responds by saying, it would be good for you to go without it. How else can you lose those 20 pounds you've been talking about? I feel so connected to Bess. Like, I'm the scaredy cat, I'm the plump girl wanting to lose 20 pounds, like, I like to eat, and I just feel for her so bad. She's the only one who ever seems to have, like, level-headed concern when it comes to jumping into these mysteries, and what does she get for it? She gets fat-shamed all the time by her two best friends. I've never felt so seen. Not that my friends fat-shame me or anything, but I can relate. So I feel like the story kind of loses a little bit of like the A plot, B plot formula that a lot of the Nancy Drew mysteries tend to solve, but the kind of B plot almost comes in a little too late for it to really make sense to tie it all up in the end. But overall, I gave this one 3 stars. I thought it was an okay story, especially with it being one of the like what I call like a hometown mystery. Even if it's not in River Heights, it's supposed to be around the area of River Heights in a fictional town. I like to call those the hometown mysteries. This one actually wasn't as dull as some of those tend to be. Maybe I'm a little bit harsh, but I just love the location-based ones. They're just so much more interesting for me. But this one is actually pretty good, and I liked that. It was definitely interesting with Nancy trying to like toe the line between like being undercover as part of like the theater cult as the theater troupe, and the side of her trying to like solve the mystery, because this one definitely takes a lot of weird twists and turns that I was not really expecting, and it was definitely an interesting one. And there's actually like one point in this mystery where Nancy kind of gets into an altercation, and it just kind of like gave me the chills whenever I was reading it. So I thought that this one was really good. I ranked this one 3 stars. Not my favorite story, but probably one of the better ones of what I would call the hometown mysteries. Oh, and one interesting thing I noticed in my copy of this book that I thought was really funny. So usually like in the beginning of the mystery, they always like to do like a callback to the previous mystery and just like say, you know, like a little one-liner referring to that. And then in the end, they do the same thing with the succeeding mystery. So for this one, at the very, very end, they make reference to the next book, but it says the Moonstone Valley Mystery. And if you guys are familiar, that is not the name of the next book. The next book is the Moonstone Castle Mystery, but this one is printed as the Moonstone Valley Mystery. So I just thought that was interesting, a little thing that I caught. I don't know if that was a mistake or if that was the original name of the story and they changed it between publishing. So I don't know. I just thought that was a little interesting thing that I just happened to pick up on and thought it was a little funny, interesting thing. So moving on, that brings us to the last story in this set of reviews, and this is number 40, The Moonstone Castle Mystery. This one was published in 1963. This one also happens to have the summary in the book itself, so this one reads, when Nancy Drew receives a valuable moonstone as a gift from an unknown person, she is amazed and puzzled, but it is only the first of several startling events in this complex mystery that challenge the ingenuity of the pretty sleuth. Why are the Bowens, a missionary couple who recently returned to the United States, having so much trouble finding their missing 17-year-old granddaughter? Trying to uncover a clue to the orphan girl's whereabouts, Nancy and her friends traveled to Deep River, the town where the young Joni Horton lived with her guardian grandmother until Miss Horton's death 14 years ago. From the motel where Nancy, Bess, and George stay, they see in the distance an intriguing castle-like structure with a drawbridge. Gossipy Miss Hempstead at the village tea room insists that Moonstone Castle is haunted. Curious, the 3 girls attempt to explore the abandoned castle, but an ominous voice warns them away. Other strange happenings in Deep River convince Nancy that there is a connection between Moonstone Castle and the mysterious Moonstone gift. But what is the significance? And where does the baffling disappearance of Joni Horton fit into the intricate puzzle? How the young detective exposes a cruel hoax that has far-reaching results makes a dramatic and exciting story. So I'm pretty sure that this was a story that I had read when I was a kid because the book cover seems extremely familiar to me. But when I was reading this, I have to say, it was like reading a brand new book because I did not remember a single thing about this story at all. So some of you eagle eyes might have caught on. We do indeed have an orphan in this story. And as far as my bingo card, you guys, I hit like major bingos on this one. I got 4 bingos on this card. So I did really good on that one. And when I was reading, I happened to find this little bookmark from the previous owner. It's really cute. It's got like a giraffe and a kangaroo and an elephant on here. It looks like, I think they're supposed to be like little postage stamps, but they're very, very cute. And I can't tell what this writing is on here. It kind of looks like Thai, but I know it's not Thai, but it's got that same kind of like really curly kind of look to it. But I thought that was really cute. I found like a little stamp bookmark in my book. I love finding things from previous owners. I think it's really fun. So just happened to find that while I was reading. So this is another one I would call like a hometown style mystery, but they are traveling to Deep River, a little small kind of summery town where the girls are hanging out. But of course, Nancy receives a moonstone, and she kind of receives it in a creepy kind of way. Like, you know, whenever serial killers cut out letters from the newspaper and post it together, that's how she receives the moonstone, which would just absolutely terrify me if I ever received anything like that. And this one kind of reminded me just a little bit of the story of the Clue in the Crumbling Wall, because we do have another orphan or partial orphan, and her name in that story was Joan, I believe, or Joni. I think they called her Joan and Joni, but they also reused that name again for the orphan in this story, and it also involves an abandoned castle. So again, this one had some like where have I heard this before kind of vibes. And I also noticed when I was reading this book, I'm like, wow, it's kind of been a long time since we've heard of Togo. Nancy has not mentioned him since the first book that I reviewed in this video, which was the Hawaii one. She hasn't mentioned him since, and it's been like 4 or 5 books, girl. Like, come on, where's Togo? And I needed Togo on my bingo card to get another bingo, so I was a little salty on that one. So this one has another vibes where like the girls are going like on a summery vacation at a motel, and you know, they're doing a lot of swimming and all that kind of stuff. But this one, they really kind of get a lot of good tips from the local gossip lady. You know, she's kind of like the town busybody, and she runs a tea shop or tea room called the Brass Kettle, so the girls go there quite a lot and kind of pick up little clues from there, which I thought was really funny. I don't know, kind of character. We don't really see too many of these like busybody characters in Nancy Drew other than Nancy herself, but it was fun kind of seeing like that character and how she kind of helps progress the mystery along, I would say. And it's kind of funny how there seems to just be an unlimited amount of abandoned castles around River Heights and the surrounding area. Who knew that, you know, Midwest America would have so many abandoned castles? Of course, we have another camp boyfriend, but this time it's actually for Bess. So she kind of makes a very similar comment that, you know, of course, she's got this guy she's kind of sweet on at the camp, but then the boys show up and the guy just so happens to kind of disappear right before that. And she makes a very similar comment that Nancy made in the Stagecoach mystery. And basically, Bess makes a comment of something like, oh, I just hate complicated situations. And it just kind of made me laugh because it was like a very similar comment that Nancy had made just a few books prior with her camp boyfriend. We also get a little peek of some George lore. Now, we don't really learn a whole lot about George ever, but in this one we actually learn that how she got her name. So she says that when she was born, her parents were so sure that they were having a boy that they only picked out the name George, and then when she was born they just decided to name her George anyway. So I thought that was kind of a cute little nod to explaining her name, because we've never really known why she was called George other than to, you know, kind of fit into this like tomboy archetype, but now we at least have a little bit of a backstory to it. So we also have a few interesting things that happen, including a boat wreck, some mysterious disappearances. Of course, it wouldn't be a Nancy Drew book if Nancy didn't tease Ned, and Ned actually shows up and we get the first mention of Ned and Nancy like actually kissing. There might have been one mention of it in one other book. I have a very vague memory and I can't remember what book it was, that there might have just been like a quick little kiss or something, but it actually mentions that Ned kisses Nancy when he shows up. But of course, Nancy always has to tease him, and she makes a little joke that you know, when she's off on her dangerous things, she'll be sure to take a handsome police officer with her. Nancy. Another little fun fact, I think this is the first Nancy Drew book to actually use the word murder. So I thought that was interesting because I don't think we have heard that word ever used before in any of the Nancy Drew books, which I'm pretty sure later on we're gonna hear that more, but we're on book 40 and no one has said the word murder before in a mystery series. So this one definitely had a really big kind of like plot twist in my opinion, as for figuring out, you know, who's all involved with this and villains and non-villains and things like that. There was kind of like a big leap here that I wasn't prepared for, because I was kind of like, I kind of wish they would have like laid the groundwork for introducing this character a little bit better in the story so it didn't feel so out of left field. But as always, it's a Nancy Drew book, so it is what it is. So overall, I ranked this one 3 stars. I thought it was a pretty average story. I liked this one, but it wasn't that crazy good. If I was gonna give this like a half star, I'd probably rank this more like 3.5, because I think it was just a little bit better than like just baseline, which 3 stars tend to be for me. But overall, thought this was an okay one, and that is the last book for this review. So those are all my thoughts on books 36 through 40. I love making these videos, and I feel like I have just been flying through these books lately, so I hope that you guys have been enjoying these reviews, and definitely let me know if you want me to start doing more in-depth reviews, maybe have a little bit of spoilers or not. Just let me know what you're interested in. Do you like these kind of subsurface level type of reviews, or do you want me to like really get into the nitty-gritty? Because if people are interested in that, I have no problem, because my notes on these are kind of funny. They're a little bit shady at times. Like, I kind of like to throw little jokes into my notes, but I usually can't really bring out all of those into my review videos just because I don't want to spoil things. But I have a lot of fun kind of picking apart the mystery a little bit, saying like, okay, did this thread follow all the way through the mystery? Where did it kind of like lose the plot and stuff? And I just have a lot of fun kind of like really digging down into these stories in the end. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram, link is below. And until my next video, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.